I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the disappearance of Anna Walshe, the mother of 3 young boys. Investigators have not found her, but they believe they know what happened and who is responsible. Here's the story. Anna Walshe was born in Serbia in 1983. After graduating from a university in Belgrade, she eventually moved to the United States in 2005. She became a dual citizen. Anna worked in the hospitality industry at various hotels, and it was at one of those hotels where she met Brian Walshe. In 2016, Brian and Anna got married and started a family. Together, they were raising 3 young boys. In 2022, Anna obtained a position with a real estate company, which forced her to split time between her home with her family in Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. This move, along with Brian's federal indictment related to an art scam, put a lot of strain on their relationship. Then, after spending New Year's having dinner with friends, Anna seemingly vanished. She was reported missing by her employer in D.C. and by Brian on January 4th. Investigators suspected Brian and ended up executing a search warrant which uncovered evidence they believe proves Brian murdered and dismembered Anna, despite the fact that her remains have never been found. Brian has been charged with Anna's murder and is locked up waiting for his trial. Think about this story and Anna Walshe, 3 young kids at home. Where did she go? You know, we've seen this fact pattern, unfortunately, several times before through the years here at Court TV. A couple with young children, and all of a sudden, someone goes missing. Usually it's the wife, the mom. So why? Why do prosecutors believe that Brian Walshe could do this? Well, I want you to take a listen to the prosecutor at Brian Walshe's arraignment, talking about Brian and Anna and what was going through the mind of the accused killer.
In December of 2022, it had become evident that Mr. Walshe was suspecting his wife of having an affair. He was routinely visiting the Instagram page of one of her male friends, and on December 26th, his mother, with his input and direction, obtained and hired a private investigator to surveil Anna Walshe in Washington, D.C. On December 27th, the oldest son's iPad was used to research best states to get divorced in and worst states to get divorced in.
A private investigator suspected that something was happening here? That brings us to our first question in this investigation, and it's about the Walshes. What was going on in their relationship? And how would that be connected to any potential motive for murder? Joining me to help figure all this out, longtime reporter in Massachusetts at Boston 25 News, Bob Ward is with us, and the host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast, a psychotherapist who wrote a book on killer spouses, Dr. Ravi Ludwig. Great to have you both here. Before we dive fully into this, I just want to put one more thing out there. And this was the paramour, the alleged man that Anna was seeing, speaking with police. And this is January 7th, 2023. So it's about a week into the investigation. And you may recognize this name, Sergeant Y. Buchanan, which is Yuri Buchanan from the Karen Reed case. And Detective Lopes traveled to Washington, D.C. and spoke with attorneys that represent, and we've redacted the name of the alleged paramour, who resides in D.C. and is the most frequent contact with Anna on cell phone records in possession of investigators. So they're talking a lot on the phone. Statements to investigators is that he was in a dating relationship with Anna Walshe and had been for several months. The relationship became more serious over the past few months, and they had spent Thanksgiving together in Dublin and spent Christmas Eve together also. They were open about their relationship in Washington, D.C., and they had plans to celebrate the new year on January 4th, 2022, after She returned from Massachusetts. Okay, Bob Ward, it seems that this was a strained relationship, and a couple things in play, right? The fact she's got this new job out of town, and he's got this indictment.
Yeah, the indictment, you can't overstate that enough, as being a major role here in what was driving that wedge between them. He had the indictment for selling, a federal indictment for selling fake Andy Warhol prints. He was looking at serious jail time, substantial fines. You know, going back even further than that, he also had issues with his father, who passed away, and issues over his will. And it just financially, he presented as somebody other than who he was. So he presented as somebody who was well off and connected, when really he was just scrounging for money. This is according to the prosecution. And he was putting up this false front, and he could not afford the lifestyle that he tried to portray himself as having. But there was even trouble before that. Vinnie, back in 2014, while they were still dating, she told police down in D.C. that he threatened to kill her and all of her friends, but she stayed with this guy. And, you know, that relationship may have been open down in D.C., but it certainly was not up here in Massachusetts, where he was on house arrest, waiting sentencing for that federal case. And in December of 2022, he caught wind of what was really going on, and that sent all these events in motion.
All right, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, let's talk about this and how it could be connected to a potential motive. What goes through the minds of a spouse, of a husband, of a father? He's got, on the one hand, he's facing federal prison time. On the other hand, his wife is doing very well in her career and seems to be creating a new life for herself in Washington, D.C.
Well, you know, clearly Brian was a person who did not feel good about himself, had a very abusive history, and felt like who he was not good enough. So he meets this woman, he convinces her that he's the successful guy, and over time, his wife finds out who he really is. Somebody who is not wealthy, not successful, and has a hard time actually making a legitimate living, and she finds somebody else. And what we know about abusive relationships, when a woman plans to leave, that it triggers something within the husband, where a husband can become homicidal. They're dependent on the wife, but they don't want that wife to live if they are not going to choose them. And it sounds like that's what happened here. The wife was moving on. He knew it. He knew his life was falling apart. And this is what he did in order to both punish her, most likely, allegedly, and also to get some money, which he was in desperate need of.
I want to put this up on the screen as well. Anna's good friend also spoke with police. Here's from the report. Investigators spoke with Anna's friend, name redacted, and learned that the marriage between Anna and Brian was strained. Anna was planning on having the kids live with her in Washington, D.C. Anna had reportedly given some sort of ultimatum to Brian about the resolution of his criminal case with the federal government and wanted the kids to be with her. When investigators viewed Anna's residence in Washington, D.C., they observed it to be ready for the kids to move there with clothes and other items available. So, Dr. Robbie, it seems like this is exactly what you're talking about. This is the moment where she has made all the preparations to leave him, you know, physically, go to another state, and relocate the children with her and start some sort of a new life without him, because on the one hand, he's going to prison for the scam that he was running, and on the other hand, she doesn't want to be with him anymore.
Right, and exactly. And this is the moment where, in Brian's mind, Anna is bad. She is the rejecting woman who is leaving him, who is plotting and finding a way to have a new family without him. He is being left And that is just unacceptable. And the rage that he feels for Anna treating him the way he feels that he really is, this worthless guy who isn't worthy of a relationship. So instead of taking responsibility and owning that, he kills the woman who has found him out to be, you know, a loser basically, and has chosen another man and chosen, you know, to raise his family with somebody else. That was just an unacceptable scenario in his mind.
And Bob, you look at the scenario. I mean, it seems like she had already moved on in her mind, right? Like she's out of there.
Yeah, it does look like she was out of there. She was making her plans. She had a new place to live. She had a new guy to spend her life with. She knew she was going to take the kids somewhere else. But I think there's also evidence that Brian was not aware of this. You know, in the days before the murder took place, he starts Googling those questions about divorce. But what I'm thinking about is, and what I always have a hard time wrapping my head around, is that party, that New Year's Eve party. The police found in the dining room, they found a box for a champagne bottle, where Anna wrote a message to Brian and said, "This year is going to be our greatest year." So, word to that effect. "I love you. Everything's going to be great in the new year. Let's make things better." So she had not had that, I don't think, had that conversation with him that she was going to leave. So, you know, you kind of wonder. She was getting things ready, but there was no date for sentencing yet. In fact, he was only sentenced this year, and he got 3 years. He has to pay, I think, $475,000 in restitution. So there was still time. So it's going to be interesting when this trial takes place to find out what that dynamic was, what happened at that New Year's Eve party in the hours before she disappeared.
Absolutely crucial. All right, folks.
I just want to say that
we're out of time, Dr. Ravi. He knew. He knew.
He knew.
He's got the sense that he knows. All right, Dr. Ravi, thanks so much. Bob's going to stay with us. Coming up next, what are the details behind Walshe's art scam?
In 2001, Anna Walshe had taken out approximately $2.2 million in life insurance on herself, where Brian Walshe is the sole beneficiary. And as a result of working at Tishman Speyer, she has an additional more than $400,000 life insurance policy where he was the sole beneficiary. In total, her life insurance is over $2.7 million, where the defendant was the sole beneficiary. Your Honor, as a result of the extensive investigation that was done into this case, the defendant's grave incentive to flee of being charged with murder, and that he has one open matter, I would ask that the defendant be held without bail.
So being held without bail, you know, he had the issues here, obviously, with what happened to his wife, Anna, but also another outstanding matter. This was the matter involving this alleged art scam that he was running. Take a look at this. This is from the U.S. attorney up in Massachusetts. February 24th, 2024, a Lynn man, that's Brian Walshe, was sentenced today in connection with a years-long, multifaceted art fraud scheme involving 2 purported Andy Warhol paintings. Brian Walshe sentenced to 37 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release, also ordered to pay restitution of $475,000. In 2021, he pleaded guilty to 1 count each of wire fraud, interstate transportation, scheme to defraud, unlawful monetary transaction. So that brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is about him and his scam. What are the details behind Walshe's art scam? What was he doing here? Still with me, reporter for Boston 25 News, Bob Ward, and joining me, Massachusetts trial attorney, served as special counsel to Johnny Depp in his defamation case. Wayne Dennison is with us. Okay, I don't know where you guys go to buy your art, but this is some art that was apparently purchased through eBay, but it was Warhol's. I want to put them up on the screen so people know what we're talking about. One's real, one's not. We have 2 different ones to show you. Let's take a look at the first one. The one on the left, not real. The one on the right, real. So you got the fake on the left, the real on the right. We have one more that I want to show you. The fake on the left, the real on the right. These are, well, one of them in each set is an actual Warhol. The other is what this defendant was apparently selling. Wayne, let me start with you before I get into the details of exactly what he went through and did here. How serious of a case is this? Because this seemed to be a big black cloud hanging over his head and the marriage with Anna.
It's a very serious case, and it's been pending as a black cloud for a very long time. This goes back to 2011, where he got the paintings, the original paintings, allegedly from a friend. But this thing has been going on and on and on and on. You're talking about a sale that was made in 2016. We're all the way to 2023 before he gets sentenced.
It's fascinating to go through what he did. And this is what he did. 2011, as Wayne said, he's visiting a friend in South Korea, and he convinces him that he could take a couple of his Shadows collection from Warhol's 1978 paintings, telling the victim he could sell the art for a good price. Then the victim comes across two paintings purported to be from this collection on eBay for $100,000 with a purchase price, and he's got an invoice for it because he got the invoice from his friend. Then in November of 2016, the buyer negotiates with Walshe and buys them outside of eBay for $80,000. But then the buyer's assistant flies up to Boston to get the paintings, gives a cashier's check to Walshe. He deposits it, takes money out, but then the buyer, a day later, takes a look at the actual paintings when they come back and realizes that they have staples and new canvases and don't have the authentication stamps. Walshe sort of avoids the guy, and it turns out that the original paintings were sold way back in 2011, and he had done the same scam in 2015. Bob Ward, how is this guy just running scams? Is that his career? Is he like a career scammer? Did he have any legitimate job?
It doesn't appear that he did, or if he did, he wasn't making much money from the jobs. You know, I've met over the last couple of years since this news broke, I've talked to plenty of people who told me they knew Brian Walshe, and they spent time with him, and they said that they were taken in by him. He was very gregarious, and he passed himself off as being a very wealthy man, and they totally bought it. We're talking about intelligent people just talking about their interactions with the guy. The thing that blows me away, Vinny, is that you got $100,000, tens of thousands of dollars people are spending, and they're not verifying these things ahead of time. You know, it really is surprising. But he's in that world, and he was in the world, you know, here in Boston, you know, Beacon Hill, and rubbing shoulders with some very powerful people from time to time within various industries up here. And so he knew how to move in that world, and he knew how to present himself. But he was a fraud, an absolute fraud.
And you know, Wayne, when you're in trouble with the feds already, you've got all these other things happening, you realize you got away with the scam for a while, but not forever. What are your thoughts about, you know, the fact that he was already, you know, on house arrest when all this stuff is happening? Like, are you shocked? Are you surprised that he's allegedly made the leap from being a scammer to a killer?
Well, it does seem that this was financially motivated. So you start with a scammer who's trying to make a buck on the side, you know, lives in a very affluent south of Boston suburb right along the water. And you start with that, and now there's $2.7 million in life insurance out there. It does seem to be the next leap, and boy, it's a horrible leap, but it appears that he took it.
And, you know, Bob, when we talk about this couple, Anna, very successful in her own right, like very, very successful in her own right, building a career, coming to this country from Serbia and building a great life. And I wonder if she felt like she had gotten scammed as well by the art scammer.
It does appear that way. And also, don't forget this other issue with his father and the inheritance. and the allegation that he basically stole his dead father's house out from underneath the estate. And that's part of all this too. His dad had money, and he wrote off his son because he felt his own son was a scam artist. So there's all of that swirling around. You know, they're saying that this trial may last about a month, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes longer, because there's a lot here for prosecutors to dig their teeth into when they start presenting these facts.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Wayne, about any of this scam stuff making its way into his murder trial?
Well, I think you're going to have to prove a motive, and this scam stuff will be reflective of that motive. And I do think it will get heard in the murder trial. In every likelihood, you're going to hear that story as the precipitating factor in this ultimate crime.
Yeah, it's unreal. Like, you're living a fake life. You end up with a beautiful wife who's very successful. You got 3 beautiful kids. From the outside looking in, you're living the dream, but it was all fake. All fake. All right, folks, coming up next, what is the evidence against Brian Walshe?
Tom.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the disappearance of Anna Walshe, a mother of 3 little boys. Anna was born in Serbia, but became a dual citizen, living the American dream with a beautiful family and an amazing career. All that ended after New Year's in 2023. Here's the story. Brian Walshe seemed like he was a wealthy, successful businessman until he got caught up in a major art scam. The feds indicted him on charges of selling fake Warhol paintings. At the same time this was happening, his wife Anna was doing extremely well at work. She landed a lucrative position with a realty company that had her splitting time between her home with Brian and their 3 boys in Massachusetts and Washington, D.C., where her employer was. The federal indictment and the commuting to work put a strain on their relationship. Then things went really bad when Anna seemingly vanished after New Year's Eve with friends in 2022 going into 2023. The investigation resulted in the arrest of Brian Walshe for the murder of Anna, and he is now locked up waiting for his day in court. And while he waits, he claims his innocence. He's saying he did not do this. I want you to take a listen to his defense attorney, kind of laying out clearly what the defense will be here.
Your Honor, it has been 4 months since Anna Walshe has last been seen. It was on January 1st of this year. As Your Honor knows, under Massachusetts law, a person is not presumed dead because they're missing for a period of 7 years, because it is easy for a single person to disappear if they want to disappear. In that 4 months, there's been no body found. There's been no indication of if she died, how she died. There's no murder weapon. There's no motive.
No body, no motive. So that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Defense was talking about what they didn't have. So what is the evidence against Brian Walshe? How are they going to prove without a body that he murdered his wife, Anna? Joining me, longtime reporter in Massachusetts at Boston 25 News, Bob Ward, and retired Army intelligence officer, former NYPD officer, and now a private investigator, Manuel Gomez is with us. Great to see you both. Let me start here, Manuel. Your thoughts about the fact that they have not been able to find her body?
Well, unfortunately, they've not been able to find her body, but the evidence is still overwhelming against Mr. Walshe. You got to remember, they found on his son's iPad evidence showing that he was looking up how to find stuff to clean up on a crime scene, how long it takes before you're missing, if a body's missing, and so forth when it's reported. And not only that, but he also lied. He lied numerous times to the police saying where he was. And he said he was only at a coffee shop when it shows him at Home Depot buying cleaning products, over $450 worth of rags and so forth. So no, unfortunately, the body is not going to be given up by him, but in due time, I think he will.
Well, let's do this. Let's take a listen to some of the evidence that prosecutors believe they have in this case.
Mr. Walshe had told the babysitter that he and his wife initially were going to go out for a late brunch, New Year's Day brunch that day. But then he told the babysitter that Anna Walshe had returned to Washington, D.C. That morning at approximately 6 a.m. for a work emergency, and that he needed to visit his mother in Swampscott, and asked the babysitter to stay. He had also told the babysitter and the family friend that he had lost his phone, and he had told the family friend that he had felt somewhat freed having lost his phone. Subsequent analysis of his phone determined that it was actually plugged in the morning of January 1st. At that time, where the phone is showing that it's at Lowe's in Danvers, the defendant walks into Lowe's in Danvers by himself on store surveillance video. He is seen purchasing numerous items, including 5 Lowe's 5-gallon buckets, a Lennox high-tension hacksaw, 48 terry cloth towels, a framing hammer, Tyvek full-coverage suit, shoe guards, mop, snips, 200 disposable rags, trash bags, Murphy oil soap, and other cleaning products. It then travels to CVS in Danvers, where Mr. Walshe is again seen on video by himself purchasing 13 different types of hydrogen peroxide. It then travels to Stop and Shop in Swampscott, where Mr. Walshe can be seen buying 3 64-ounce jugs of ammonia. From 2 a.m. to approximately 5:30 a.m., the oldest child's iPad searched and visited websites concerning instructions on how to clean blood and DNA from objects, how to remove SIM cards from phones, how to mix ammonia, and search for apartment complex in Brockton, Massachusetts. At 8 a.m., the babysitter returned to the Walshe residence. Mr. Walshe left the residence that morning and is on surveillance at Home Goods in Norwell, purchasing 3 area rugs and scented candles. The babysitter would state that by the end of the week, she had noticed that the downstairs area rugs had been replaced, as well as a kitchen trash can. On the afternoon of the 3rd, Mr. Walshe visited 3 different apartment complexes in Abington and 1 in Brockton. Video from these complexes captured Mr. Walshe in the area of the dumpsters for 3 of these complexes. One video showed him looking into a dumpster and not putting anything into it. A second captures him taking items from his SUV by the area of the dumpster. And then the third depicts Mr. Walshe depositing a bag that appears to be heavy into the dumpster. On January 4th, at 10:04 a.m., the person that Mr. Walshe had texted the day before responds to him and asks if he has heard from Anna. 10 minutes later, Mr. Walshe then calls the building that Anna Walshe worked at in D.C. and reports her missing. 5 minutes after that, he texts back to the friend and says, work is looking for her.
Bob Ward, as we take a look at the evidence and the timeline of this case, a couple of things. One, the fact that he's had no communication with his wife for 3 days, then reports her missing. That's odd. And then all these little trips to the dumpster, and like Emmanuel pointed out, the purchasing of these products just out of the blue.
Out of the blue, and I think he's wearing a device, an ankle device, because he's still away. He's on house arrest for the federal charge, so they know exactly where he's going. And if they don't, he lied about at some points that he was saying he was over here when he was actually over there. No, it's all very damning. But one of the main things here to remember is that the Commonwealth is going to try to prove a first-degree murder case without a body. Now, it's not impossible, and you hear much of this evidence, and it seems overwhelming, but they would really like to have the body. And the reason that they're saying that there's no body is that the dumpsters that he used were in 2 different parts of the state. The ones in the southern part of the state, where he was seen dumping that heavy bag, the bag containing something heavy, and he struggled with it, that went to an incinerator near Cape Cod. All of that stuff is gone. But the dumpsters that were on the North Shore up near his mother's house, the police were able to find some of those items, including a hacksaw. And they're trying to get DNA from that hacksaw to prove once and for all that Anna Walshe is dead. That hacksaw is one of the hacksaws that they saw him buy, I think it was at a Lowe's up on the North Shore. They saw him buy that hacksaw. That's the hacksaw they say they found, and now they're still working to try to determine DNA if she is on that hacksaw.
That would be crucial, crucial. Let's take a listen, Manuel, to more of the information regarding these Google searches that he allegedly made.
At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to embalm a body. At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. At 6:25 a.m. on the 1st, how long for someone to be missing to inherit. At 6:34 a.m. on the 1st, can you throw away body parts? At 9:29 a.m., what does formaldehyde do? At 9:34 a.m. on the 1st, how long does DNA last? At 9:59 a.m., can identification be made on partial remains? At 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. At 11:44, how to clean blood from wooden floor. At 11:56 on the 1st, luminol to detect blood. At 1:08, what happens when you put body parts in ammonia? At 1:21 p.m., is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them?
You know, Manuel, when I look and listen to that evidence, it tells me two things. One, the timeline of when she likely died, because we start talking about when does a body start to smell, but also, I don't think this was something that was plotted and planned. It seems like it's something that just happened, and he's doing all this stuff after the fact, trying to cover up his tracks, as opposed to planning how he was going to murder her.
I agree. And not only that, but I thought it was, quite smart on his part that he spoke up the places where he's going to drop off the bags. The fact that he bought that hacksaw, all right, cutting the body up, and she was a small woman, she wasn't a big woman, would fit her into one bag if he cut her up in 5 pieces, which he most likely did. And the other thing is that the fact that it went to an incinerator, the average incinerator for these trash facilities are between 1,800 and 2,000 degrees. To cremate the body and cause it to become ashes, it has to be 1,500 degrees or higher. So, of course, like Bob Ward said, the evidence is completely gone. But this guy clearly planned it at the last minute, judging by the timeline. But, again, this is a professional con artist. And I want to say, Vinnie, I blame the courts for her death. You know why I blame the courts? Because, Vinnie, she was living in a house with a man under house arrest who was already found guilty for selling pictures of and stealing money, and they did not put him in jail. They dragged it out for a couple of years. This man should have been in jail for the crimes of the Andy Warhol pictures, and he wasn't, and she'd still be alive. So, unfortunately, I blame the courts for this one.
That's a great point, Manuel. Manuel Gomez, thank you so much. Bob Ward, appreciate it. Still to come, what impact will Trooper Proctor have on Walshe's trial?
The moment he stepped foot into investigating Brian Walshe and the disappearance of his wife, he knew he was under federal investigation.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Sean Diddy Combs arrested on a federal indictment.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon, only on Court TV.
Then 5051 says, oh, she's skating, right?
Correct.
And what did you write after that?
My response was 0 chance she skated.
And then what did you write?
She's
0 chance she skates. She's right?
Correct.
You decided on the 29th of January, 17 hours into this investigation, you decided individually, Trooper Proctor, you're not only going to put it on the girl, you decided you're going to make sure this is cut and dried, and the way you're going to do it is to make sure that she's That's what you were saying.
That's Alan Jackson, the attorney for Karen Reed, going after Trooper Michael Proctor during that trial. Retrial coming up in 2025. But that same trooper, Michael Proctor, lead investigator on Brian Walsh's case. Take a look at this. Some complaints from Walsh's defense. The investigation of Mr. Walsh was being conducted at or around the same time that Proctor, his supervisors, and other agents of the Commonwealth were investigating the aforementioned Reed case and making biased and unprofessional remarks and decisions. Now, I want you to take a look at Brian Walsh's attorney in court going after Trooper Michael Proctor.
What we're able to determine is that Trooper Proctor, who was the lead investigator on this case, the moment he stepped foot into investigating Brian Walsh and the disappearance of his wife, he knew he was under federal investigation. And so his bias, his motive, anything or his integrity is forefront for him. So with all those thoughts, when you're considering all of that, I don't know how it's not Rule 14. I don't know how we're not already in possession of this. And so otherwise I'd rest on the papers. And they talk about Beal, your argument. In Beal, I agree the prosecutor doesn't have a duty to go investigate our case, but they have it. So we're not asking them to go get something they don't have. And in footnote 4 in Beal, which isn't cited in their brief, it specifically says the government isn't able to simply put their head in the sand if there is something exculpatory. And documents that show that the lead investigator in a homicide case knew he was under federal investigation the moment he stepped foot in the case is certainly...
Isn't it even stronger? Well, I'm not making your argument, but wasn't he already under prosecution?
No, Your Honor. Do you mean Mr. Walsh or do you mean... No.
What's the timing of his federal indictment?
Do you mean do you mean Trooper Proctor or Mr. Walsh?
I thought you were talking about Mr. Walsh.
No, Mr. Walsh's state investigation. No, Trooper Proctor knew he was under federal investigation the moment he stepped foot.
I thought you were saying there was a bias against your client because he was under federal law.
No, it's Trooper Proctor.
That's an additional bias, by the way.
Right, but we're just focused on that part, that the moment he stepped into this investigation, and bear in mind, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, they control homicide investigations. They work with the state police with CPAC. So now the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office knew that Proctor was under federal investigation, specifically for how he investigates supervision, etc. He now is the case officer in this matter while his case is pending. So that's one of a myriad reasons why not only are these documents relevant, they could very well be exculpatory. And under Rule 14, it's not exculpatory, it's material and relevant. And so with respect to that, I would rest on the papers, Your Honor.
So Brian Walsh's defense looking to get some more information about Trooper Proctor, trying to get some of those records to use against him in this case. So that brings us to our next question in this investigation. What impact will Trooper Proctor have on Walsh's trial? Is this a problem for prosecutors? Joining me, Massachusetts trial attorney Wayne Dennison. All right, Wayne, what are your thoughts there? How does this play now? Because, I mean, the allegations in the Karen Reed case were very specific to that case, right? That, you know, he's covering up for another cop, protecting a cop, framing someone else. But how does any problems in that case relate to his work in this case?
Well, the argument that we saw from defense attorney was simply that he was already under federal investigation relative to the Karen Reed case. And in lots of ways, Boston is a big city, but a very small town. And so you see the same players over and over again. You've got, I think, a very difficult defense in this case, and you've got to put somebody on trial. So I suspect we're going to see another trial in which Michael Proctor is going to be a centerpiece, although I'm sure that the prosecution will try to deflect that as much as possible.
So how does that play in front of a jury, right? In Karen Reed, I get it. Like, I understood it. I could follow, I could connect the dots as to what their theory was. But Brian Walshe is, this case has nothing to do with police, has nothing to do with alleged corruption. It has nothing to do with a cover-up. This is, for lack of a better term, simple domestic violence type of case with people who are not connected to law enforcement at all. So is it a stretch by the defense? Is it a sign of desperation because they have nothing else?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's a stretch, but I can tell you this. If you don't have anything else, you're going to have to point to the empty chair. And Michael Proctor is going to be the empty chair in this case because the prosecution has already made it clear that they're not going to put him on. And what the defense will say is that this guy is a bad cop. And he was the lead prosecutor on this case. He was the lead investigator on this case. And this case is therefore dirty and impugned by the fact that the lead investigator is a bad cop.
Now, one of the big revelations for the defense in the Karen Reed case was getting Trooper Proctor's cell phone. Do you think they'll have an opportunity to get those records from his cell phone, whether it's text messages and other things?
Well, that part of the argument that you just saw was what materials does the prosecution already have in hand, largely from the Karen Reed case, that they should be turning over in the Walshe case. And that was the entire argument that you just saw in front of Judge Frenier, that was all about those various materials that we already know about. It has been some expectation that the prosecution is going to go out and try to make some inquiry into what, if anything, Proctor has that might point to some level of misconduct here.
Yeah.
But who knows how hard they're going to push that.
Wayne Dennison, great to see you. Thank you so much. Now, I don't know what Brian Walsh's defense will be, but if he claims that Anna just ran away, I don't think anyone's going to buy it. There's no proof of life anywhere. But even more so, there are 3 little boys without a mom. There's no way she would have just walked out and walked away from them. And there's no way you can sell that to a jury. That being said, without a body, jurors still may have some lingering questions. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues.